Okay, Chris, you're ready for me to get rolling?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is Todd Schmidt. I'm Waunakee's Village Administrator. Welcome to the November 2nd Waunakee Village Board meeting. For those who are attending in the public, everybody is muted. It looks like that Erin will be in shortly, by the way. She has an updating occurring on her computer. So for those in the public, you're muted in the attendee portion of the Zoom meeting. When there are public comment sections, of which there'll be two today, we have comments on items on or off the agenda, and then a specific public hearing regarding the budget. Please raise your hand using the Zoom feature. Click the button and I'll be able to let you in to provide comments if you care to. And for the board, please stay muted if possible. And besides board members, other members who are panelists, please remain muted on both video and audio unless you're participating on an agenda item. And then President Zellner will call on board members to physically raise their hand like this to make comments on particular items, but all votes will still be taken by roll call. So with that, I'll turn it over to Village President Zellner.
Thanks, Todd. Okay, I'm going to call our meeting for November 2nd, 2020 to order. Roll call, please, Caitlin.
Nyla Fry. Here. Gary Hertzberg.
Here.
Aaron Moran. Bill Ranum.
Here.
Kristen Runge.
Here.
Bill Willems.
Here.
Chris Zellner.
Here. Thank you. First item we have is confirmation of open meeting compliance. Caitlin.
I can confirm that the draft agenda was published in the Waunakee Tribune on October 29th. The final agenda was posted at all 3 village posting locations on October 29th, and the final agenda and packet were made available online on October 29th.
Okay, thank you. Next we have consent agenda. Would anybody like anything pulled, or I'd look for a motion? Hey, Aaron.
I would move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, motion by Gary Hertzberg,
Second.
second by Phil Willems. Any comments from any of the board members? Please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none. Caitlin, roll call vote, please.
Nyla Fry. Nyla Fry.
Yes.
Kristen Runge.
Yes.
Bill Ranum.
Yes.
Chris Zellner.
Yes.
Bill Willems.
Yes.
Aaron Moran.
Yes.
Gary Hertzberg.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, next we have public comments. If there's anybody who would like to make any comments for items either on or off the agenda for this evening, please raise your hand offside and Todd will bring you in.
Okay, I do see some hands going up. I'll just make a note. We do have a separate item for discussion on the budget. So if you're wanting to make budget comments, please reserve those for the public hearing on the budget. But I will bring in Anne. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Anne Lewandowski, and I'm at 103 West 3rd Street. I do want to alert you as elected officials that the State Disaster Medical Committee has formed a subcommittee on vaccine distribution and allocation. This is very important work on how the COVID vaccine will come to communities, to the health systems. I would strongly urge you to ask Todd for the information on the medical committee meetings and or for their recordings. He has that information and I hope he will pass it along. Thank you.
Yep, I'm happy to forward that on to the board, Anne.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Todd.
Okay, anyone else?
Okay, again, for those wishing to speak, raise your hand at the bottom right-hand corner of your Zoom screen. We have Jerry or Linda, Jerry and or Linda. There we go.
Hi, Linda Ashmore. This is just a request that the public comment period before was 1 minute. You changed it to 2 minutes. Now it seems to be back to 1 minute, that it be 2 minutes. Otherwise, people kind of feel like it's not worth trying to do the public comment. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Todd, was there a change that happened?
Is it on the agenda or was it on one of my PowerPoint slides?
It's been on different things. I think it was on the agenda as 1 minute public comment. So maybe it's copied from
Okay.
old ones.
I was gonna say
Yeah,
it
the
might-
agenda for tonight
clarify.
says each speaker is limited to 2 minutes under the public comment. Is there something else that you see, Linda or Caitlin? Do you see something? Either way, we can take a look, but it's intended to be 2 minutes.
Thanks a lot. I kind of thought that might be the case.
Okay, thanks, Linda. Any other side?
Not at the moment.
Okay, I'm going to take just 1 second to, I was late getting onto the meeting tonight. For me, I was singing happy birthday to my father. It's the 45th anniversary of his 39th birthday. And so that's why I was late. So I will publicly say happy birthday to him. So I hope that was okay with everybody, but I just wanted to mention that. So,
And I've got
All
one item to share, Chris. In your boxes in the from the league magazine today has the whole edition is focused on employees, and happy to show that top left is our own Kurt Aker from Public Works. And this is all representing the breadth of public sector employees in the state of Wisconsin working for villages and cities. So it was pretty cool to see Kurt right on the cover. So good job, Kurt.
great. Thanks, Todd.
And there's no hands up, Chris.
Okay, then I'm going to move on to the next section, which is our public hearing on the 2021 Village of Waunakee budget.
And we're assuming, Chris, that you'd like a presentation with a quick update from Renee
Yes,
first, and then,
Renee can go through that first, and then we can we'll hold the public hearing after that.
okay,
ahead,
very
Renee.
good, thank you.
Okay, I am going to share my screen so that you can see the brief PowerPoint that we have. All right, is that showing up for people?
I'm seeing Zoom, and that's all I'm seeing at this point.
I show your presentation.
Okay,
Chris, what do you see?
It just shows Zoom on my screen.
I'm
Does
seeing,
anybody else not see the presentation? Raise your hand if you do not see it. Chris, it's looking like it's just you at the moment.
Okay, either way, if everybody else can see it, great. I have my copy right in front of me here. So go ahead.
so first, just a kind of a reminder of where we left off from last meeting. So we were proposing a 0% increase to the assessed tax rate. And so these are slides from the last time that this is what the village taxes would be at various values of homes. One thing that came up at the last meeting was that department heads were directed not to request any new employees, but that had they been able to, a couple departments would have requested it. So we put together some slides to kind of go through the details of a potential public works employee and a police employee to share with the board for their consideration. And I think each department is going to kind of go through their slide. Is that what we were thinking, Todd?
We didn't, I'm happy to go through the slides, but I would note that we do have Bill and Kevin from Public Works here regarding the Public Works Parks item, and Chief Kreitzman is here as well on the police items. So I'll go through the bullet points if you like, rather briefly, and then pause after each one so you can ask questions of the staff. Does that sound good, Chris?
Yes.
All right, so one of the staffing positions was for Public Works. Actually, Public Works had requested this position with the same justification information that I had provided to the village board a year ago. And the pressure upon the department is no different. In fact, it's greater, and we'll discuss that. But it is possible, feasible for us to bring in an additional staff member by middle of February. Last member was added in 2019. But when we look at the way in which our community has changed since 2016, it's quite kind of eye-popping to see physically the additions and logically the impact on Public Works. For example, we've added 385 single-family homes since 2016. We've added 30 miles of street lanes. Now, that itself doesn't necessarily jump off the page, but when you consider that's over a 20% increase since 2016, that gets a little more significant. One of the things keep in mind that has been added is Highway Q, now as a village maintained portion of street within the village. In addition, we've got 50 or so acres of parkland, stormwater retention, or right of way that we maintain has been added. So I think what's facing Public Works that's most notable would be caring for those streets and the infrastructure. In particular, in talking to Bill, plowing seems obvious, right? Repairing potholes, but we also have legal obligation by statutes to sweep the streets on a regular routine basis. And those things combined has really increased the pressure upon the Public Works Department. The duration of our street and ice removal operations are increasing. We've got our park and shelter additions I mentioned. Caring for all those trees, all the trees in our urban forest is notable. I would add that we because of COVID and kind of some hiring pauses this year, we didn't have the same summer crew as usual. So we weren't able to do the trimming along sidewalks and trails as we usually do on as fast a pace. That was realized quite quickly by citizens, and some of you may have gotten emails or calls. I personally did as well, as that was noticed. Obviously, more households with more trees leads to more brush and leaf collection. And then there's frankly more special events that have been added to make our community special, but that also is an impact upon Public Works. So doing a little bit of math, when you look at some of our comparable communities within Dane County, the average number of Public Works and Parks laborer positions per 1,000 population is 0.8. We're at 0.6. That's the lowest in the peer group. And there at the bottom of this slide, I present the budget impact that's proposed. We do not want to ignore the fact that any mid-year hire in 2021 is an automatic cost impact on our 2022 budget. And Renee and I have already shared with you the concerns we have about the trickle-down impact of the COVID pandemic on the budget that we're going to face a year from now. So with that said, I'd like to sort of welcome Bill and Kevin and ask if there's anything that they'd like to add in addition to these comments, and then I'll offer time for questions. Bill or Kevin, anything you want to add?
No, I guess the only thing I'd add is, like I said, with the trees, we're up to well over 12,000 trees that the village is trying to maintain and keep trimmed and out of streets and sidewalks.
One thing I'd add is, and I think it's obvious, that the numbers tell the story and really the justification for adding another personnel.
Questions then from the board for Kevin or Bill or Renee or myself?
Todd, I'll let you call on the board members since I am having difficulty.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. Okay, there's Gary. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, I think, if COVID stays around and we're locked down all of 2021, one of Bill's biggest issues he has is the number of programming. It's great for the citizens and the kids in our community, but the programs and the special events have really increased in the last 2 to 3 years. And it really, puts Bill in a tough spot sometimes. Beyond, I've talked about the tree thing for a couple of years now that we're so far behind now. I don't know if we'll ever catch up. So it's needed. I just don't know, what people want to do. I'm in favor of it, of course.
Other board members? Jump right in. Nyla, go ahead.
In my mind, there isn't any doubt but what Public Works needs additional personnel. It's just a matter of trying to figure out how to do it at this point.
Okay, how to do it, Nyla, in terms of affording it? Is that what you mean?
Yes, making it happen and making it affordable for all concerned. Something that we can do in the budget.
Okay. Phil?
There's no doubt that we have to do it.
Okay, others? Kristen?
Yeah, I worry about getting so far behind that our folks are stressed and that the day-to-day maintenance that gets deferred naturally when you're shorthanded leads to bigger problems down the road, bigger tree branches, more to deal with, and just trying to relieve some of the pressure on the guys. They do an amazing job. I want to make sure they've got the support they have.
Okay. Any other questions, or should we move on to the police position detail?
Hey, Todd, one other thing, because I thought about, gosh, maybe we put this off till October instead of, February, but I think it's important for a new hire that comes in that department to get used to, to understand the community, understand the streets. It takes a long time to learn that knowledge that person needs, because really to me, it's important to have that person here when the snow starts to fly. And if they're not up to speed and familiar with the community and ready to go, that's why I just think we need to, bring them on as early as we can.
I'll add that one thing I advised both Public Works and police in putting these positions forward was what I wanted to show the board was the soonest we could bring these positions on. And the reason I suggested that was because Renee and I expect the budgeting story of 2022 to be less favorable than it is today. And today isn't a happy-go-lucky story either. So if there was a lump to take, if the board wanted to do this, and if there was a lump to take, I would suggest taking it in 2021 versus the wait to see impact of a larger burden in 2022.
So Todd, I got everything up on the screen again, so I'm going to pop back in here. So I agree with everything that my fellow board members have said. The thing that jumps out on the screen is the fact that we have 0.6 park laborers per thousand, and the average is 0.8, so we're actually below average with that. That said, I think we do a very good job as a board in making sure that our department has the state-of-the-art equipment necessary to take care of things, which part of that goal was to make sure we didn't have as many laborers necessarily. So my question to Bill and Kevin would be, if we don't add this person, and say it's 2 years before you had somebody like this, would there be any drop off in service to our residents, noting that we're probably going to continue to grow over these next 2 years again?
Bill, are you still on? I'd defer to Bill. I mean, he's more involved in the day-to-day and what's going to be the impact if we don't have the additional person.
Yeah, and I would have to say, I mean, where we'll see it obviously is snow removal. I think we'll be further behind on getting things done in a timely manner. The tree trimming is probably the biggest thing out there right now. that we've got to maintain and get back to. We've kind of, because of the emerald ash borer, some of our tree trimming wasn't done because we were taking ash trees out or cleaning up ash trees that had fallen. The other things that I'll even experience somewhat this year is our trimming, just weed whacking, light poles, fire hydrants, things in the parks. A lot of that stuff wasn't getting done. And actually, frankly, we were getting phone calls from people wanting to know why that kind of stuff wasn't done. The other thing too, with COVID, we've had to change the way we clean shelters in the summer and playgrounds and in general, just because it's taking more time and the amount of disinfectant and things like that we're having to use. I just see it's hard to say how much we'll fall further and further behind on by not adding this person at this time. I guess we'll again do everything we can to continue to provide what we provide. So it's hard to say what may suffer in the end.
So that said, again, I appreciate everything you're saying. Bill, do we have all the equipment that's going to be necessary to take care of things? If we add the hire, that's one thing, and we all know that labor is our biggest expense. Is there anything from a more equipment that could be done as opposed to hiring? Or do you see it as that the labor is the most important thing? We have all the mechanical side of things taken care of.
Yeah, we usually and that's usually my first go-to is to try to find equipment that we can get versus hiring people. And I think we're sitting pretty good on the amount of equipment we have and what we use. It's just coming down to now having people to use it.
Okay, sounds good. Aaron, do you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah. So if we're at, sorry, pulling it back to 0.06 laborers per 1,000, will this bring us up, or are we still behind? I guess, are we growing fast enough, or, is one enough? I guess I don't know how big exactly the department is.
Well, if you were to do the math, I think, Aaron, we have how many laborers, Bill? Is it 10? 9? What's our number? Help me out. No, I know Caitlin and Bill, we were talking about it on
9.
Friday.
We have 9.
So if you look at 0.6 and you do the math, that'll probably nudge us up 7.7, I would guess.
Okay.
I will say, and you'll hear me say for the police slide as well, the stat that we're under average suggests a need. But it also tells me, and it's worth saying, that our team has done a job to satisfy our residents in really great ways, and in more efficient, I would say, in more efficient ways than have our peer communities. So that's definitely worth an attaboy, an attagirl for the work that our team does. You'll hear this. You'll see the exact same thing with PD.
Okay, any more questions from board members for Kevin or Bill? Okay, then let's move on to PD, and we'll handle these when we get to the end and look at the full picture here.
Okay, Adam, you can pop up too then, and Renee's advanced the slide for us here. So the need for a patrol officer is something that also isn't a new discussion. Adam's predecessor had talked about it last year and essentially sort of gave Renee and I forewarning that this is something that we continue to inch closer to even last year. And the answers here, if we look back at that 2016 growth discussion, when over 1,000 new residents approach, mid 300s in new households, that obviously is going to tell you that more patrol is required. I mean, you can even talk about streets and parkland as areas that require additional patrol work. Special events, it's a similar story here. Investigation is an area that is definitely a need, and in fact, I'll let Adam explain how he would implement the additional officer, because it would involve enhancement to our detective work as a result. So we don't you don't have to talk too long to find a lot of people who would agree that the aspect of criminal activity in the village, theft, auto theft, and other related issues like that are things that have continued to be of concern. Training in the PD is probably one of the departments of all of our departments that receives the most intense levels of training, and they have to receive it by requirement, in fact. And then on top of that, we're evolving as an organization in the face of mental health crisis issues and de-escalation approaches to matters that these days we've seen a lot of situations in the face of racial tension that have brought up de-escalation as a higher and more critical need. Therefore, the training becomes a higher priority. But there's the numbers again. When you look at per capita spending within the Dane County, Dane County communities were second lowest at 187 per resident. Dane County average is at 260. If you look at a peer group across the state of communities over 10,000, between 10 and 16,000, we're at 1.5 officers per thousand, where that average is 1.9. We sit at the lowest. Again, it's a big kudos to the men and women in uniform doing what they do at a really high level in a very efficient way. But when we talk about our growth and our change, we see us reaching our limit there. So with that, there's the budget impact. Impact is slightly more divided over the 2-year span. That's because the process for recruitment of an officer is a more lengthy process than it would be for adding a laborer to our public works staff. So that's the story. Adam, do you want to talk about how you'd implement the new officer and detective?
Yeah, just real quick, probably 3 or 4 years ago, Chief Plendel had decided we were getting to a point where we really needed to look at whether we needed to add a second detective in the department. So what we did is we took a patrol officer off the road and we made them an investigator to really test whether or not that was needed. And over the last 4 years, we really have seen that we do need 2 detectives. Just the amount of work that they're doing, tracking everything down, search warrants, subpoenas, courthouse, follow up for the DA's office, especially given the last few years where we've seen an uptick in burglaries and stolen cars and things like that. Things that we really take those investigations a lot further than most agencies would. But in doing so now, what we're seeing is that we really need that patrol position back in our patrol staff in order to make sure that we're maintaining staffing levels and getting everybody time off when they need it without having to order our staff to work on their days off, which that kind of creates a little bit of a strain in of itself. But just kind of keeping up with everything. COVID really took a hit on our training year, and that doesn't mean that we can just take a year off. It just means we have a lot of catching up to do. And so really kind of seeing some stresses in both areas. So I would do away with that patrol person that's helping out as a detective right now and promote a detective full time, and then backfill the patrol position is what I'd like to do. And the only other thing that I would ask is, I appreciate you guys taking a listen to this. I'm sure I can speak for Bill. And, as Todd mentioned before, that, I don't think we've ever over asked. I hope you guys feel that way. And the tough part is when we really need a spot, we kind of need it. And I would say that's kind of the time that we're in. So happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Okay, board members, please raise your hand if you have any questions. Okay, I guess I'll have one, Adam, and that is for the budget impact for 2021, or maybe it's Renee, on that increase of 65,000. Does that, I'm assuming when this officer gets promoted to detective, they're going to have an increase as well. Is that figured already into this budget part?
Yeah,
Yes, it
it is. Right now, our detectives, and Renee can jump in here if I'm saying anything wrong, but right now our detective receives $1.30 more an hour than their typical if they were in patrol. So it would be $1.30 more an hour than that person is currently making. And then the addition, obviously, of the new staff to backfill.
Okay, that's the only question I had. Other board members, questions, comments?
Go ahead, Nyla.
I was very fortunate to be able to attend Citizens Academy a year ago, and I got to see firsthand all the effort that the police department puts forth. And with everything that's been happening in Waunakee in the last few years with the stolen cars and everything that has happened, again, I feel that the position is necessary. It's just a matter of figuring out how we're going to work it into the budget to get it done.
Okay, thanks, Tyler.
Adam, maybe you could address that a little bit. When Nyla's bringing up the thefts and such, that is not just a Waunakee issue, that is more of a county-wide issue. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's been going on countywide, statewide. I will say that Waunakee has been hit pretty hard. That's been over the last few years, and a lot of that has been because people have been successful. We've talked about that quite a bit. We've done a lot to try to get that information out there, reminders to lock doors and things like that. Actually, my night shift crew will actually come and knock on your door if they see your garage door open right now, just as an effort to stop this from happening. So we've been hit pretty hard. It's certainly not specific to Waunakee, but we've definitely seen our fair share.
And Adam, you don't see that. It sounds like it's mostly Madison juveniles coming to town here doing most of the problems. So you don't see that going away.
I really don't. We haven't seen it yet. We get a pretty regular report from the city of Madison Intelligence about a hot sheet of how many stolen cars are going on right now, and I don't remember the last time that was under 2 pages. So it's still going on quite frequently. Knock on wood, it's done a little slower. We've had a couple cases where people have seen on the camera systems that people still come and try doors. The doors are locked or closed and unable to get in. But we still are having cases too where people are getting into garages and I don't really see it going away.
Adam, I'm just curious. I've heard that the judicial system in Madison sounds like they just turn these kids back loose on the street, right?
Well, sometimes it certainly sees that way. There's definitely a lot of multiple repeat offenders, and there's a number of reasons that can happen. But we're trying to just control what we can control here and do our part. And we've always, like I said before, we kind of go a little further than most places do as far as processing evidence and getting it to the crime lab in hopes that we can identify these people and they can be held accountable. So it certainly depends on the case.
Any other board members?
I'll speak up. Yeah, you guys spent some time in my neighborhood last week, Adam, answering some calls from our neighbors, one whose home had been entered. And we see you driving through all the time, your crew driving through all the time, and appreciate it so much. So thank you for all of that work.
Thank you.
The same from us. Thanks.
Okay, that said, thank you, Adam. And I think at this point, Todd, is there any other department heads that are going to be talking?
No, and Renee has one more slide to give context to Nyla's good question about affording the additional positions in particular.
Go ahead, Renee.
Yeah, so this kind of sums up those slides in terms of the expense that would be added in each of the next 2 years. And there are a couple options to make something like this happen. Option one is to increase the tax levy. And so it would go from a 0% increase to a 1.2% increase, just over $6 for the assessed rate. So what that means is that would add $26 in taxes for the average home in the village, which we recall from last time is about $370,000 is the value of the average home. So they'd see $26 additional dollars on their tax bill for the village portion of the taxes. A second option would be to decrease some of our other expenses. So our 2 biggest expenses are our wages and benefits and our capital spending. So if we were to do wages and benefits, we'd have to wipe out the entire COLA and any step increases really to cover this. So, which is also challenging because the police union contract isn't settled yet. So whether that would even work for theirs, is doubtful. So that's a little bit of a challenge to make that work with the wages and the benefits. In addition, obviously, staff would not receive any increases. And then another thing would be we could step down our pay-as-you-go capital funding a bit. If we sort of prorated the increase over all of our pay-goes, streets would take the biggest hit of about 105,000 of that 132 or so that we'd have to add to the budget. And then trails and parks would receive a lesser decrease of about 27,000. So those are some areas we could decrease, or option 3, we could do some combination of these options. Chris, you're muted.
Okay, that said, I think this is a perfect time for us to open our public hearing to hear from the public if they would like to weigh in regards to the budget, and then we can discuss after that. So Todd, if you want to let us know if we have any people that would like to address the budget.
Sure. Okay, I have one so far. Again, feel free to raise your hand. As the hand is raised, it'll show up on my screen in order as they're raised, and I can let folks in. Renee, why don't you end your screen share?
That's what I was
And
doing.
I'll let in Anne.
Hi, thank you, village board members. I was actually very supportive of the concept of a new streets person, but I am alarmed at the rate that we are growing with only adding 300 and some odd houses, but adding 21% new roads. So as you're approving new developments, I really urge you to look at how big these developments are, how many road miles they have, and what the really long-term impact on the budget will be. My second request for you is to look at what a vaccine program might need in support and talk with Dr. Ranum to support his efforts to bring a vaccine place for us. I worry as a resident of Waunakee, as somebody who has done pandemic planning and preparedness, and who is now co-chairing the SDMAC work on vaccine distribution, that there will be systems in place that disadvantage smaller communities and will drive people towards it. And so anyone who is disadvantaged in our community may not have good access to a vaccine. And that's very concerning. I know Dr. Ranum is working on identifying sites through SSM, but I worry that because they will take a systems approach and look for their patients possibly, that the entire community may not be well served. And I think that this is something that is incumbent upon you as the leaders in our community to think about how that might impact our budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Todd, any others?
Yes. I'm gonna guess Linda this time.
That's right.
Okay.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity to weigh in. So one of the things that struck me as I was looking at the budget was how much goes for TID funding. The pay-go, and how I think there's over $500,000 in municipal revenue obligations for them. And I understand there's another TID being considered, public hearing sometime in November. And kind of echoing what Ann said, that as we grow so rapidly and we're using TID money to grow, having the money to pay for all these new roads and the staff to maintain them and to do the public works is something to consider. Another thing, second thing I wanted to talk about is Waunakee is part of the village budget. And I really think Waunakee should not be run by the village. And the reason is that if you solicit donation from those who come before the board for approval of their projects, it just doesn't look good. I'm not suggesting that Waunakee go away, rather that it not be a function of village government. please consider if you are a business in our approach to donate to Waunakee. You've got a project that's going to come before the board, and you may feel that if you don't donate, there's less of a chance of a favorable decision. And I appreciate all those who do donate. And if it's purely for philanthropy, that's great. And if that is their motivation, they'll continue to donate if somebody else sponsors it. And also, I don't see anything in the budget allocated to WNC or the food pantry. And there's been a lot done to help businesses, which they need help. But there's also people that are struggling. And if there's any way to find any money in the budget for those two organizations, I'd like to see that. And the last thing that struck me as I was looking at the budget was the amount we pay in legal fees. And I don't know if there's ever been an analysis done that if it would be cheaper to just, in the long run, to hire a village attorney versus, contracting out all over the place. Those are just my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Linda. Next, Todd.
Okay, thanks, Linda. Hands, be sure to raise your hand if you have any other comments on the budget. And as a reminder, there will be one more budget public hearing. The statutory hearing will be occurring in 2 weeks from today at the regular village board meeting at 6 p.m. At that same meeting is when the village board is asked to take action on the proposed budget. So it'll be, as the village board considers the comments tonight, as well as these positions, Renee are going to be looking for your direction on whether you care to see any modifications to the proposed budget that we show you for approval on 2 weeks from today. So again, any other hands from attendees? Doesn't look like it, Chris.
Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing and open it up. And maybe Dr. Random, if you want to address a couple of Ann's comments with regards to the pandemic and the vaccine distribution.
Sure. So what Ann is, and she was very helpful, of course, with the, we had a recent, with the school district, a flu vaccine distribution. And the process of getting the coronavirus vaccine out has not been established yet. And what I believe, at least a component of what Ann's talking about, is like, how are we going to get it out? Is it going to be distributed through the health systems or through the communities or through what agencies are going to distribute it? And are we going to need resources if we decide to use the community to do it? I believe there's a possibility of getting the different health agencies together, but and working as a group on it, but we might need public ground to do it. And so it is really uncertain to me, following Ann's belief, is really uncertain to me, like how it's going to be distributed, because the it isn't available yet. The process hasn't been, at least in my system, hasn't been organized. And it may be that it has to be, that at a certain point that the distribution needs to come through the communities, or at least the ability, the space for it, so that it wouldn't matter what your insurance system is, that you would be able to get the vaccine. So kind of still in the air. And I guess this should be something that if something changes, I'll just bring it to the board every time, and maybe Ann is going to be connected to it too. I know we're communicating, and hopefully we can communicate with everybody.
From a funding perspective on that, and Renee, I'm guessing that you'll probably agree with me, when we have unusual, unexpected, well, I shouldn't say unexpected, we know something's going to come, but without clearly understanding the expectations, as well as what could be expected to be a one-time event, this would probably be a prime spot for use of fund balance to support a municipal effort if that would be required. So that's my advice to the village board today, in respect to Ann's comments, is that we right now sort of prepare ourselves that would probably be the source that Renee and I would come to you advising use of.
I would agree with that.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Rana. Other comments from board members? Let's start with if you have any comments with regards to either Ann's or Linda's comments in regards to their questions. Please raise your hand and I'll call on you. Phil.
Well, as far as hiring our own attorney, I think that would not be beneficial to us because we'd still have to go outside of his expertise for special situations. We do, some people do have attorneys and still have increased bills because attorneys are usually good at 2 or 3 things and they have to call in help when maybe a labor issue comes up or zoning. So I think the way we're going right now is really the more economical way than to hire our own attorney.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Nyla.
Pertaining to what Linda said about attorneys, the only thing I think about that is if we had an in-house attorney, would it always be our interest? And I think Brian does a good job, but I wonder if we're getting, I don't know how to word it. If there's ever, you know, when it comes to issues just with Waunakee and not have any outside, not influence, but anything from the outside coming through him. And I know he's an attorney for many municipalities, and I guess that's what I wonder about. I'm not questioning anything he has ever done or anything. It's just a question that goes through my mind. And then pertaining to WNC and the food pantry, I don't know if anybody has had the discussion with those two groups. I do realize that with COVID, the needs have grown for food pantry. I know that because I've talked to someone from the food pantry. So I'm just wondering if anyone's made contact, and if so, what their response from them was, if they need assistance, if so, in what way, and if anything could be done to help them.
Prior to the next budget meeting, Nyla, I will have a conversation with both. That was brought up at the listening session a week or so ago, and it's on my list to do. So I'll report back to the board on what I hear back from both organizations. I think what I would add is that the village did contribute a considerable amount to the move that WNC did not long ago. The village stepped up. But as far as ongoing funding, that's something I'll ask about.
Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, I know our Waunakee group in Waunakee, we just donated $5,000 to the food pantry a couple weeks ago because we understood they were in need. And I think it's going to be up to, you know, all the service organizations who are unable to have their events this year, and that's how they raise money. I think we're really going to have to look at individuals throughout the community to step up, because those service groups donate that money every year to everything from Little League to hockey to the food pantry to all these different groups. And all that funding is gone in 2020. So I think we really have to look forward to trying to help those groups out because they're going to need it. Otherwise, I think from an attorney standpoint, I think the positive part that Brian brings is his knowledge and background working with other municipalities, because he understands in Dane County what issues are. He can relate to them. He's up to date on what's going on in other communities. I think that's a benefit for us in Waunakee.
One context to the municipal attorney, if I could add, Chris, and Renee, help me out here. But what you might see budgeted is not solely supported by tax dollars. A large share of the municipal attorney work is billable back to the applicants for various developments or other things. Renee, do you have the breakdown on that?
Well, the amounts that are billed back are actually not in the budget. So the line item for legal counsel, that includes our labor attorney and Brian both. So for like negotiations, we have a different labor attorney for the union contracts. So that which is billed back to the developers and the revenue that we get from that, those do not get budgeted.
I see.
But there is some legal budgeted in the TIF districts. And again, the TIF district legal, as it's needed, would come from increment that is not levy supported. So I think it's like 57,500 in the general fund. That's covers the gamut of all of our legal.
That's tax supported.
That's tax supported, sorry,
Okay.
yes.
Nyla, go ahead. You're still on mute, Nyla. There you go.
Okay. I have a great understanding of all the needs that Waunakee has for the most part, because I had 4 sons in many different activities. And so I realize, but I would like to emphasize and stress that when you're talking about WNC and the food pantry, you're talking about basic needs. You're not talking luxuries. You're talking about people having enough food to eat and basic things like a warm winter coat. That's all I'd like to say about that.
Okay, thanks, Nyla. Any other board members? I think we've had everybody, but Aaron, do you have any comments in regards to the topics?
Not right now.
Okay, Kristen? Bill? Bill or Phil?
I guess I'd go with the
Sorry, Bill, you broke apart there. You'll go what? Bill, I missed your end of your statement there. I didn't hear it.
Looks like he might be having some connectivity issues there.
There he is.
Chris, Renee and I definitely want to get a certain answer from the village board on what you care to see in our budget in 2 weeks in regards to those 2 positions we discussed today.
Yeah, we're
And
gonna
if
get
so-
to those. I'm
you're
taking
getting
you
there.
first, and then I'm gonna go to those. Bill, go ahead.
Okay,
He's back now.
Are you at me?
Yep, go ahead, Phil.
I'm in favor of the support of WNC. I work with her quite a lot. I'm also in favor of the food pantry. I work with them quite a lot. But you know, I think those are done quite well with private donations from the more affluent people in town and the people that like to be philanthropic and aren't, there's a lot of people that like to give to those groups and they don't want anything back. So I'm in favor of supporting them. I don't think it's something that we have to add on to the budget, but I think there's other ways that we can help them as a village.
Okay, Kristen, did you put your hand up? Did I see it? No? Okay. I guess my comment in regards to that is Todd, have they requested any additional funds from us, or have they come to us in need and asked us for any assistance at this point?
not monetarily specifically within the past year or so that I can recall.
My only concern is that if we're as the municipal, what's to say that we don't have the Rotary, the Lions, all the different clubs that are going to come to us if they're in this pandemic, that they're all funded or short, that they wouldn't need help for us to go. If we're just reaching out to them to say, do you need funds? My concern is just from a budgetary standpoint, that makes me nervous. I would like them to come to us if they're looking for funds. Just my opinion, if they're not getting enough from their normal donors, as Phil is saying, the philanthropic organizations and people, that's where I think we could potentially step in. But to solicit from them that they need funds from us, I think I'm just not comfortable with that personally.
And some organizations may care not to have, the concern sometimes is if it is municipally funded, that the municipality has some sort of thumb on them. I've heard that as a concern in general. When that happens, some might claim that our Chamber of Commerce receives municipal funding and that aren't we already doing that? I would add that our source for the revenues that we provide to the chamber come entirely from room taxes. And Renee, correct me if I'm wrong, but the room tax supplies the dollars that we then contribute via agreement to the chamber, and that relates to this state law for tourism entities that we follow in relation to that funding. Is that accurate, Renee?
Yes, the 10,000 that we give to the chamber has come from room tax, and that there's a mandate where we have to use 70% of our room tax for the entity the tourism entity in our community. So that's where that funding comes from.
So the other one that go ahead, Bill.
Will our chamber contribution go down? Because I mean, is that something they budget? Because I know what's going to happen. I mean, it doesn't look like the hotel's getting used very much, except for other uses right now.
It is going down this year, and we've already notified them of that, which will be a matter they'll have to consider with their own board for how to fill that revenue gap. It's not going away entirely, but it's going to be a few thousand less.
Yeah, the room tax is really suffering because what we're finding is that even when it is occupied, it's occupied being paid for by tax exempt organizations, and then they do not have to charge the room tax and pass it along to us. So most of the revenues that they are getting right now are from tax exempt organizations, which is reducing the amount of revenues that we receive in turn.
Gary, go ahead.
Chris, I think just to follow up on Phil's comment, he knows this better than anybody on the screen tonight, that I think Waunakee's always been a very giving community. And I think if the need presents itself, no matter if it's the food pantry or neighborhood connection or chamber, people in this community will step up privately and help out to make sure people are taken care of.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, so the only other issue before we get to the police officer and that was brought up was Waunakee, and I want to have your guys' take if you feel we should pull that out of the village and have a different organization run it, and just wanted to get your guys' opinions on that. Because based on what I heard is that if we're receiving donations, I guess we wouldn't be able to take donations for library potentially and others, but it sounds like if somebody makes a donation to an event that somehow that's going to get them favors from all of you. I find that offensive for somebody to make that comment, but we're not getting it personally. It's something that's going to benefit our whole community. But I do want to get your take on that because if you guys agree with that and we feel we should take that out of the village, then that's it. So Phil, I'm going to start with you, just because you're in the first spot there on my screen.
Well, I would think that the village's contribution to Waunakee is that, okay, number one, we don't charge Waunakee rent for the park. Okay, big deal. We don't rent it out anyway at that time. We don't charge them for the few hours of extra police protection. Well, it's part of what makes life better. That's what we're here for. We don't charge them for the extra cleanup from the park. Well, that's a little extra service. We do let Waunakee operate under our umbrella of insurance, and that's the big deal. Other than that, I don't know any money that goes into Waunakee. I think Waunakee is something that brings a lot of people to Waunakee, and they spend some dollars, and it's an economic boom for Waunakee. So I really can't see any money going out from the village taxpayers to support Wannaboom. End of story.
Okay, Bill, Random?
Well, I guess I wouldn't know anybody who, I mean, I wouldn't know of any person who would have gained benefit from donating. So because I don't know who the people are who've donated, to be honest. So I apologize for my ignorance, but I think this is just one of those things where we've all been on these committees and they're great things, but they're a burden. So anything that makes it easier, I'm sort of for it. So.
Nyla?
Okay, I've been around a long time. So many years ago, WannaFest came up against the same questions. You know, they and I don't know what the result was because I left WannaFest, being on WannaFest before it was resolved. But there were questions such as, you know, parks and shouldn't be doing cleanup. So then they got the Boy Scouts to do it, and they went to have someone else doing it. I don't even know what they do now. I don't know if they began for their own guards or if they have police up there and if they pay for the police. I don't know the answers to all those questions, but all I can say is that I know Wannaboom and WannaFest was never affiliated with the village as far as I know, but all these questions came up pertaining to, you know, employee paid time, park usage. I don't know if Wannaboom pays or WannaFest pays a fee for any of this. Someone has more information than I do, but I'm just saying that WannaFest has been through the same thing many years ago. That's all I know.
Okay, thanks, Nyla. Aaron?
I guess I see Wannaboom as a little baby event, and maybe as it grows and becomes a WannaFest, someone, you know, can become its own entity or someone can take it on. But I think if we can support it in this way right now, it's a good use of our services. And yeah, I think we should continue to support it.
Okay, Kristen?
I'm with Bill. I have no idea who donated to Wannaboom. Like if you told me right now, you'd give me $1,000 to name any single donor, I'd have no clue. And I'd lose out on $1,000. Yeah, so I'm all for the village supporting village events. Every community I work with across the state, the municipality supports the municipal events in whatever ways it can. It's just part of life. So.
Okay, so we can talk about that at our next meeting. I wanted to get all your input. I'm very close to that event, obviously. And as I said, I think we have around 60 to 70 donors right in that area. Does that sound about right, Renee? You would know that number, but.
Yeah, that seems a little high, but I think there's some, you know, obviously we don't track people whose time is donated necessarily. But, you know, there's definitely quite a few donors, and like the board members say, you know, it's not like I publish that information anywhere so that they would know who was donating.
So you're right. There's a lot of them that do donate things. You know, I'll just give you a couple examples, folks, so you have it. Shine Advertising does the website and does all the advertising for the event. That's completely donated. They say that's about $12,000 to $15,000 that they're donating. Last year we had our disposal for garbage was taken care of. We didn't have to pay for it. It was included with the event. As far as the park cleaning and such that Phil brought up, are you still on? Is Bill still on here? Bill would be able to address that. We have a team that cleans up the park immediately that night starts, and in the morning we have donations from the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts come and help us to clean that park. So it gets taken care of, and it's a great civic duty for the kids when they come out and do that. Same thing, we have football players who help us with the garbage the night before to make sure all the garbage is picked up from the high school football team. So Gary, before I get to you, Bill, are you still there? And can you comment as far as additional work from a cleanup perspective of the park?
Yeah, no, we basically the two events, Wanafest and Wannabooms, are almost identical as far as amount of time we spend. Both entities, we do the no parking signs, all the signage. Both entities, we got the cleaning in the morning of the bathrooms. Yeah, they're pretty much identical.
Okay, but I mean, as far as the condition of the park after the event.
There's very little we have to do after the event. You guys do a great job of policing them, getting everything picked up from the fireworks themselves. All that stuff has been usually cleaned up before we get in there. All we're doing is just packing things up and putting it away.
Large burden from Public Works for the event?
Large? No, not at all.
Okay. Okay, so we can have a future discussion about that. As we go, oh, Gary, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I think one of the great new events for families in this community, you never hear anything but positive comments. I've got kids calling me in high school saying, hey, I got to get some hours in for volunteer work. And I know they do that at events like Wannabooms. I don't know why we're having this discussion, but this is one of the things that makes Waunakee great. And I think it's a real positive thing for the community.
Okay, so let's move on then from that. If somebody wants it pulled from the items that we run through the village, that'll be talked about at our final meeting. Let's go on to the Public Works addition of staff and police from everybody. If I could get your opinions on that. Just me starting with this, my goal from the very start, and I give staff, A++ ratings for getting us a 0% increase. They did exactly what I asked of them. And to me, it's still important. And my questions to Bill and Adam were very pointed because I want to make sure if my vote is going to be yes to do that with that it's important right now, because it's important that we hold the line, I think, in this time. Just like we're hearing about all of our clubs and so on and so forth in our chamber and the shortage of funds that they're going to have. I'm concerned about our budget for that reason. That said, I think it was Kristen's point, the longer you wait with these things, the worse things can get. And I appreciate that more than anything. I do believe that my questions were answered in regards to this. The biggest one that we're going to have to address is how do we pay for it right now? If we're trying to stay at that 0%, do we want to find another option for it? As Renee said, it would be wiping out all of the raise and COLA for our staff in order to accommodate that. I'm hoping that if we choose to do the police, that the police union will understand that we added a person, and within that negotiation that, we can have unity and not a difficult negotiation with it. That's an important thing for me as well. And I'm putting it out there for that reason. So I'd like to get all of your input and your feelings. So I'm going to start with Aaron this time.
I think we definitely need to add both positions. I think we're sending mixed messages if we are, saying that. I think adding these supports our, maintenance of our investments in other places. Like, we're investing a lot in our roads and our parks, and we need to make sure they're, maintained to the best of their ability. As well as, we're talking about providing great events and village for residents. So I think security and the protection received from the department. So I think we send mixed messages by not ensuring adequate staffing. I think option one is probably our best bet too. I don't think it's ideal, but I think we should go with that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Nyla?
Okay, when I look at everything together, I can see plus and minuses no matter what we do. Raising the taxes, property tax, for some of the families in town is, even though it's a small amount, for some, it's a large amount for others who are on very low incomes or on fixed incomes. At the same time, I feel that village employees work very hard, and for their cost of living raises, it's very important. And the PAYGO capital funding, I don't want to stretch it. You know, we're already having problems trying to accommodate the needs for the roads, resurfacing and repaving and all of those items. So I'm hoping that we can perhaps find a mixture of many things to make this work. I'm not saying how, but within the option 1 and 2, to not take all the funds from any one place, but to, in combination, find a solution.
Okay. Gary?
You know, I support both of these additions. And I think one of the things I always fear, and, you know, Kristen brought it up about, you know, when people are overworked a little bit and stressed, I'm afraid we lose some of the good people we currently have. People who have been here for 10 years and are trained, they know everything. To lose one of those persons and then try to make it back up by hiring people off the street, it's a 2-year process to get caught back up. You know, I think people have worked really, really hard for the last couple of years, and they've done everything that they could do. And I know Bill and his group very well. And, you know, we've tried to do it with technology and equipment. We've stretched that as far as we can. Yet, I understand from Nyla's standpoint, from a tax standpoint, maybe there's other places we can look within the budget. Maybe there's some of the PAYGO stuff we can look at. Maybe it's a combination, but I think it's important we add these 2 positions and come up with a reasonable way to fit them into the budget. Because as Todd talks about it, and Renee, we're more concerned about 2022 almost to see what's coming then. I think we need to get these people on board and on staff, because if we wait 2 years and then we can't afford them and our village continues to grow, how do we maintain the level of service that our residents expect?
Thanks, Gary. Kristen?
Yeah, I echo the same thing. I think, you know, I think the $26 average tax increase is pretty reasonable to pay for the most part. I understand there will be people that is going to be difficult for. But for the added police protection and knowing that our police officers are well rested and not coming in on their day off and have the support that they need, you know, for our parks folks to know that they also have the support they need. I think that's a pretty small increase in my opinion. I think as a village, I hope we're an employer of choice and that we continue to be an employer of choice. And part of that is providing people not just with the cost of living adjustments, but making sure when they show up on the job that they're not overworked and that they're not leaving at the end of the day feeling like they've got more to do the next day than they can reasonably handle, given the size of our growth. So that's just kind of where I stand on it. I support both.
Bill Ranum?
I think we have to maintain the cost of living adjustment for sure. I really do support the 2 positions. I expect Renee to just be magical about this somehow. I mean, why not? I mean, it's the least we can expect. She's been a genius the whole time. So I'm sure we'll just put all the pressure on her and we'll have it happen that way. But I think the raise is reasonable. If there's any way that we can hunt through it and find something, that's great, but I don't think there's much choice.
Okay, thanks, Bill. And Renee, he actually got your face to smile a little bit on that. Not a true smile, but at least a little smile when he called you magic. So that's good, Bill, that you're able to do that. Phil, go ahead.
I support the added manpower or woman power, whichever it is. One thing I note when I drive through Waunakee, I see all these new street trees that are in all these miles of new streets we have. And that's more forest, and all of these trees have to be attacked early and lifted and trimmed selectively so that they're not going to be a problem for us down the road. And that's manpower. We can't buy a truck or a piece of equipment that's going to do that. We've got to get the people to do it. And I would support option 1 or option 3. I don't know what room we'd have in the pay-go, but I think $26 is a fairly reasonable amount. Maybe we can get it down to 20 or to 13 by cutting out some pay-go. I don't know. You can leave off my street, it's okay. But regardless, I think we should add the 2 people.
Okay, so I think that's everybody. My comment is, in listening to all of you, and thank you guys all for your comments right now in public and making, I think what's probably going to be the right decision for this. It sounds like I think we're all in about the same spot. But you heard the repairing of roads. That's part of our pay-go budget. And we are way behind on our roads as a result of, and we'll just say I've got a can here, but there was a kicking of the can for roads for many years. And you're hearing from the trees aspect of that we neglected our trees. And so those things are coming back to us. Now, those things could have been paid before, obviously. The boards at that time chose not to put that as a priority within their budget. I think every board tries to keep their budget in check at a local level. We don't have unlimited funds that we can go and just spend willy-nilly on whatever we want to. And if Roberta's listening, please don't use willy-nilly in the paper. It'll make me feel older than I am, I guess. But I agree with all of you. And my biggest thing is, and you guys know this because I'm the one that worked with staff to get it at 0. I was trying very hard to do that. And I think with what's been stated, what the needs are, I'm all in favor of adding these 2 people as well. I will put it on Todd and Renee if we're going to choose option 1 or option 3. I don't think 2 is really an option for us with the 2 that are there. If we knock down pay-go, that's just really going to take care. We're not going to do roads, or we're not going to do things in the parks, or we're not. That's taking away things that we're using those funds for that we're going to get behind in those areas. So to me, it's either 1 or 3. And if there's some areas within number 2 that we can find to help us offset, that's great. But as my predecessor, John Lobmeyer would say, this is the most expensive thing we're doing right now in adding an employee, because it's an obligation and it continues to grow. That said, they're our most important asset that we have too. So we need to make sure they're taken care of. And this has been a difficult time. So Todd, do we have direction, or do we, go ahead, Nyla.
Question. I don't know if this is a question or a comment or what, but what's going through my mind is I suspect, as I think all of you do, that next year is going to be a very difficult budget year. So what happens if our the monies that we have to work with, the funding is so low that we can't meet our budget? I mean, the last thing I would want to see happen is to hire new employees and then not to be able to keep those positions. And I just want to know, I've been here a very short time. I want to know how these issues may have been handled in the past, or how they could be handled next year.
So 2 things that come to mind right away for me, Nyla, with that comment, and thanks for that comment, because it's something that I was thinking about as I was saying, let's do 0 this year. I think that we're pretty safe, or we've at least shown that we're safe with our housing values and those remaining. The part that's probably most of our biggest question mark for Renee is going to be, what's our state revenue sharing going to look like? Is there the property, or not the sales tax and so on and so forth? You know, we don't know what that's going to look like from the state. So that number, they've already said, we're probably going to be reduced in that area. One of the things that we have going for us, whether this is good or bad, is that we don't have a lot of hotels, that we rely on hotel tax coming into our budget, that other communities do rely on that. So we shouldn't see a significant negative from that reason from that. Outside of that, Todd?
Yeah, I'd add, Chris, that and Nyla, that our new home construction permits are on almost dead on with our prior year. That might suggest that the modest growth that we saw and kind of enjoyed in this year's budget that enabled us to increase our tax revenue is going to be probably similar next year. But as Chris said, the big unknown is state shared revenue. Fortunately for us, we're not like some communities that are counting on it as a major component. But Renee, what is our total shared revenue that we receive from the state?
So just before I get to that, it's not only shared revenue that there is concern on a decrease from the state aids. It's also transportation aid, and that's our big ticket item. So shared revenues, we get about 149,000, whereas transportation aids, we get 870,000. So most municipalities within the state are predicting, you know, when they look ahead to 2022, a 5 to 10% decrease in both shared revenue and transportation aid. So that would be about $100,000 for us.
And you might ask, why is that a target for the state? At least the shared revenue portion is funded largely, if not entirely, from sales tax collected by the state. Latest information I've heard is that's those are numbers that are in question with spending decisions by consumers. So I think, Renee, that's where the state might be incentivized to pin shared revenues on municipalities because of sales tax dropping.
Correct.
And I'm going to really be interested. I don't know about the rest of you, but as this has gone through, you know, Phil owns a Culver's. I'm going to be curious to see what's happening in the different industries. Obviously, sit-down restaurants have been hit really hard, whereas takeout restaurants probably doing very much better. Same thing when you look at outdoor activity items, whether at a boat or a canoe or whatever in those, or ATVs and all those sales are through the roof this year. So those all have sales tax associated with them as well. So I'll be curious to see where things end up for the state and what areas did really well and what areas didn't do so well. Kind of can take a snapshot view of it and see that, but hopefully it won't be as big of an impact as we're thinking, that those that did really well can offset those that didn't do so well. So Gary, you got your hand up, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think if we get impacted by the state funds, you know, I think we all realize we need both these employees now just to continue the service levels that people expect. And you know what? In 2022, if PAYGO has to get affected, and that's basically, you know, maybe improving some things or adding new things, I'm not concerned about that at this point. I'm concerned about how we take care of the residents' service levels that we have committed to, you know, next year. And I think these employees are important.
Yeah, I think it's going to be important to look at our growth. You know, if we continue to have our growth, and you know, if we do have that 10% reduction or $100,000, I mean, you're seeing tonight what it means from a budgetary standpoint. So $100,000, for example, if that everything else was even and we lost that state revenue, you know, we're looking at a pretty small increase, if any, with that growth we'd have. So in losing that revenue, I guess. Renee, am I too simple with that? Maybe I am. I don't know.
No, I think you have it right there. That, this year, we're shooting for the 0% increase. Could look at capital spending or, again, a very hopefully small increase next year to help cover that.
Renee, are we waiting on any info that we don't have yet? Manufacturing assessment, or is there anything that might move the needle?
So the manufacturing assessment, we are waiting on the final number. We got a sort of a final, but then our assessor had to do an amendment. So now I'm waiting for amended numbers, but it actually looks like my projection was very, very close this year, which I based on the assessment ratio that we saw in the TIDS when that information came out in August. So I don't think we're really, obviously we're still waiting on the other taxing jurisdictions to know what the overall tax bill effect would be. But on our side, I do need to process through and see if any employees changed their health insurance selection, either to opt in, opt out, change from single to family, because that can have an impact on the budget. But early reports are that nobody has really changed, or we knew of a change and had already had it in the budget. So I don't think there's much out, that's going to put us up or down one way or the other.
Nyla, did we answer your question? Go ahead.
Yeah. I wanted to tell Gary, thank you for your perspective. It really brought it into more focus for me. So thanks for that. And thanks for everyone else's explanations. I appreciate it.
Bill, go ahead.
So it does feel like these are.
You muted yourself inadvertently.
I'm so good at that. It's the, both these feel like safety things, including the tree thing, because in the long run, we've all cut down trees we shouldn't have cut down, right? So getting ahead of that is better than getting behind that, literally. So I'm pro on both, I'm afraid, I guess.
Chris, you're muted if you're talking.
So I think we have consensus for staff to bring back to us when we have our public hearing the next time, that we should try to include it and to give us maybe two options. One, just the straight tax, and if there was some areas within that we could cut, or they could have a recommendation that we could look at that as a combination. Is everybody in agreement with that? If you are, raise your
Can I
hand.
just clarify? I mean, I guess what I'm hearing is that you do not want to touch the COLA and the step increases. Is that the consensus?
If it is, raise your hand. I think it is, yes, but raise your hand, please. Okay, yes.
Then, there's nothing really that moves the needle very much other than capital. So, I had looked into, if we trim more out of the departmental budgets, 1 or 2%, I mean, that doesn't even cover half of, these positions. So capital is really the thing that moves the needle. So, I can take another look, but there, with what we have to budget for, fire, EMS, debt service, things like that, we can't cut those things. There aren't a lot of things that move the needle enough to cover 132,000.
If you want to approach this a little bit differently, Chris, if, for example, the board wants to be able to say that the assessed tax rate went up below 1%, let's say we go to 0.99%, and that is your directive, we can then tell you with some assurance in 2 weeks, based on the rest of the information coming in and all those details, what the true number is to get to that, if that is your magic spot. If the board doesn't have that precise sense, then we can give you some we'll give you some parameters, some ranges that you can move things. But it would help us if you sort of had this definite place you wanted to be.
Okay, let me ask that to the board members then. I mean, 1.2 versus 1 or 0.99, I don't see that as I don't think anybody's going to dig their feet in the ground too hard on that, but maybe I'm wrong. So that said, if we're at 1.2%, who would be in favor of that as the number we're going to go with? Raise your hand. Okay. Nyla, you're the only one, so I'm just going to ask if.
Well, Gary had his hand down.
Oh, Gary didn't have his hand down or hand up?
Could I make a comment?
Yep, go ahead.
I guess if the only way we could get the positions would be where it currently is, but I would like to see if we could get it lower.
Okay. Gary, you didn't have your hand up. Go ahead.
My question, Renee, does that have to basically come out of parks or streets then? Any savings on the pay-go?
Right, the only pay-goes we have are streets, trails, and parks.
So my only comment is if the board felt that, hey, let's try to keep it to, let's not do 0, but let's do 0.5%. How much do we have to take out of pay-go? And
well, you have to take 80 some thousand, I think. Is that about right? Okay. It's about $80,000 coming out of pay-go.
To get it to 0.5%.
yeah, and I don't know of that 80,000 between streets and parks, does that prevent them from doing a major project that they really need to do? I mean, I'm fine. To me, the tax increase is worth the employees that we need. But if people are concerned, maybe we want to look at an option that says, hey, we can pull out, 40 out of parks and 40 out of streets. It doesn't really affect anything major that we have coming up, but these were some want-to-do projects that we had in 2022.
They're very different budgets to do it that way. The streets is much, much higher than parks. Isn't that correct from pay-go? I think you're
right.
It's not really
about 80%.
equitable way. But
I mean, that's my only thought. If we're concerned about where we fall within the tax rating in Dane County and we want to be in the bottom quarter as a board, to do that if 0.5% is different than 1%, I would consider doing, taking some pay-go away, but otherwise I'd support just support adding the people.
Where does it put us if we're at the 6.02? Do we know?
We of course do not know. Nobody has adopted their budgets yet, but we're, if you remember from last time, we're definitely right now in the lower quarter. I have not heard, maybe there was, I'm on a lot of calls with other finance directors. I believe most, for sure in Dane County, I have not heard of anybody having as low of an increase as we are. I've heard a lot of, 1.5% tax increase, maybe 2%, but of course they haven't adopted their budgets yet. But, I don't know that it would move us way up on the list or anything in terms of our tax rate, because we're pretty close to the bottom, through 2019.
Okay.
Just one more thing about the pay-go. If we do cut the pay-go, that would likely be for multiple years because we wouldn't be able to restore those next year if we were having issues again. So it would likely be for a few years till we got out of this whole COVID and recession type area. It would maybe be a couple years where we would have a reduction in the pay-go.
Go ahead, Nyla.
Renee, thanks for pointing that out because from looking at it from my point of view, being on Public Works, we have many road reconstruction, or we have 3 roads, I believe, that need to be reconstructed, and we have lots of resurfacing, and I don't know if we could do it. It's kind of like I come around full circle, but this conversation has been good to help me understand exactly, how to do it. And it sounds to me like if we have to put road projects on hold for very long, citizens aren't going to be happy with that either.
I think, Chris, that this discussion has helped Renee understand the issues, and it has helped all of you understand the things we can play with. So with that, Renee, I think you and I can put together a number of approaches that we can work together with you on in a couple weeks.
Okay, board members, if you're good with that, please raise your hand. Okay, looks good. All right, thank you, guys. Okay, next we have, next we have presentation, Safe Communities Madison-Dane County presentation. Todd, who do we have?
Yeah, and I just brought in Cheryl Whitkey, who's going to provide an update to the board on our partnership. Go ahead, Cheryl. You should be able to unmute both your, there you go.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me before you tonight. My name is Cheryl Whitkey. I'm Director of Safe Communities. And I want to thank you all so much for the support and the partnership that you've been so supportive of Safe Communities. It was great to hear from Adam and all the work that's happening with the police department. We partner, of course, with the police department on the Med Drop program, and also the Slow Down Yard Sign campaign. We partner with the Senior Center on Stepping On classes. And there's a couple of new projects that we have going on that I wanted to just tell you about in hopes we could also provide more support, particularly in light of everything going on with COVID. So we run a program that's recovery coaching, which is aimed at reducing overdoses and getting people into treatment, because we're seeing an increase in overdoses. It's the #1 cause of injury-related death in Dane County now. And we have a program that we launched a few years ago that's basically training people that are in recovery from opioid addiction to be trained as peer support specialists, and then they go to emergency rooms and they're with people as they overdose and work to get them into treatment. So we've had a lot of success with that. Of course, with the hospitals closed now, and the jail closed, which is another place where we connected with the recovery coaches, we've moved to a virtual 24/7 helpline. So basically anybody who wants to work with a recovery coach can contact this helpline and have a recovery coach support them. We're working now, the next expansion is so that fire and EMS and the police departments can refer directly to the recovery coaches. So that's something that's new, and that Adam is actually Kreitzman is actually part of our steering committee for the Stop the Overdose Epidemic project. And so we'll be reaching out to the police departments and EMS to say, here are these 24/7 recovery coaching cards. If you have somebody in your community, you're on a call, and either a family member or a person who's overdosed wants to connect with a recovery coach, here's the number. They can call 24/7. So that's another service that we really want to make available to municipalities, because it's been so impactful. We've seen about 80% of the people who are referred to recovery coaches from the emergency room after an overdose, they get into a treatment intake. So there's really good connections there. And, it's the kind of support where they can really understand, the recovery coaches can really understand what they're going through and help them support that. So that's one new initiative that's going on with COVID, since we can't, we just can't be directly in hospitals and things. So the other thing is we've expanded our Stepping On classes. So Stepping On is falls prevention classes, and we've had multiple classes at the Senior Center with Cindy and her staff. So we're also piloting a project where we can have these Stepping On falls prevention classes virtually. And the Stepping On classes have been shown to reduce falls among older adults by 30% around everywhere else, but in Dane County, we've actually seen a 50% reduction in falls among people who finish the stepping on classes. So we're expanding that. We're one of the pilot sites statewide to be a stepping on pilot site for virtual classes. So we'll be expanding that next year and would really be delighted to, to partner again with the senior center with Waunakee to expand that. The other area that we work on is, well, there's two more, but the other one is also suicide prevention. So we've expanded it in a couple of different ways. One is we're actually the only community in the nation that works with gun shops to store guns for people who are considering suicide. And we partner with the healthcare systems to let people know that they're doing safety planning with people who are contemplating suicide, and the healthcare systems say you can take your guns to these gun shops and they will store them for you, no questions asked. And that's a partnership. Safe Communities is the link between the healthcare systems and the gun shops and people who are in crisis. And that's the same with the MedDrop program. The MedDrop program is another way that we work to prevent suicide and also accidental overdose by telling people, you can take your medication to a MedDrop location right here in Waunakee, get rid of those meds if you're thinking about suicide, or if you have a young person or anybody that you're concerned about may be diverting medications. You can take unused medications to the MedDrop box. You can also contact us about lock boxes because we have grants to provide lock boxes so that if people need to have the medications in their homes, they can lock them up and not worry about diversion, because we see about 75% of people who start using opioids and abusing them get those medications from somebody that they know, with or without asking, from our medicine cabinets. So we have to lock up those meds and we have to get them out of the house if people aren't using them. And then finally, the other initiative that we work on is traffic crashes, because we look at the top causes of injury in Dane County and then we build partnerships to address those specific ones. So it's drug overdose, suicide, falls prevention, and traffic crashes. So we run the slow down yard sign campaigns that, we have the yard signs that we distribute to all the local police departments. And we're also launching another initiative this year with the Bureau of Transportation Safety to the Wisconsin Department of Transportation to make Dane County another pilot site to try some new things, because we're actually seeing an increase in serious traffic crashes in Dane County during COVID, because people are driving super fast. They're not driving much, but when they're driving super fast, and we're seeing an increase in actually serious crashes in Dane County because of this kind of behavior. And because first responders, police are pulled so many different directions, maybe enforcement is down, but this kind of scary behavior is up. So, this is the kind of stuff that your support through your municipal support to us that you give us every year makes possible. And so I just want to really thank you for that. And if there's anything else that you think about as you think about how can we, as a coalition of organizations across the county, any other ways that we can work together and support what you're all doing to make to make Waunakee safer, we're always very interested in hearing what you think and being, supportive. So thanks for the opportunity to talk to you.
Well, thank you very much for coming tonight, and Cheryl, and sharing all this with us. And all the work you're doing is fabulous for all of our citizens, but not just Waunakee, but all in the area. So I appreciate everything you guys are doing. And Adam, I'm glad to hear you have got Adam on board, and he can be really difficult to deal with at times. So I'm kidding, of course, Adam. But no, that's all great information, and thank you for reporting it to us. Adam, do you have something you want to say? You put your face on, so I'm assuming you want to talk.
I did. I just wanted to express our appreciation for everything that they're doing. Cheryl covered a number of areas that really we're pretty heavily involved in. Some of you may have heard of the MedDrop box, and we just had a collection, but in the last year we've collected over 700 pounds. I think it was like 770 pounds of unused medication. That's a tremendous amount of medication out of homes, away from the tempting tempting people essentially, and hopefully preventing some overdoses. And I know that, we've seen a rise in drug overdoses, and, really everything that she brought up, we're taking advantage of here. So we at the police department are certainly appreciating everything and the partnership that we have, and everything they're doing for the community. So I just wanted to express my support and everything that they're doing to help us out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam, for all your involvement. We really appreciate it.
Okay, board members, any other comments for Cheryl? Otherwise, we'll let her go. Sorry you had to wait a long time with our budget stuff there. So thanks for hanging in there with us.
It was fascinating.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you. Okay, next we have under new business, discussion and update regarding COVID-19 pandemic. Todd, any comments?
I see Scott still there. Bill, I would mention, and I are planning a live Facebook chat. He might have one of his other docs join us. Are we doing that Wednesday, Bill? I think we planned a time Wednesday
Yeah.
where we'll go on the village website or village Facebook page and kind of give a perspective on what we're experiencing here. So I look forward to that with Bill. Scott, are you still with us?
I am. Trying to get my.
Do you have anything to share? And then Bill?
Honestly, I think Bill's gonna know a lot more of the numbers and stuff than I do. We could sit here and regurgitate numbers, but the truth is Waunakee's really kind of become a hotspot lately. And Dr. Random, I'm sure you can kind of back that up pretty well also. It's almost starting to get downright worrying how many cases there are out there right now in this community and around us. From a county perspective, I know they're starting to definitely see the ICU start to fill up. The hospitals are starting to fill up pretty regularly. There are some patients starting to go down to Milwaukee to that makeshift place down there. It's just constantly preaching more and more to be safe, stay home, keep your masks on. Just assume that you're going to come in contact with this stuff when you get out there. From a department perspective, we're at about 65% of our patients since our last meeting have come back positive and have been symptomatic. And like Dr. Random said, that's just a small subset of the population that's actually gotten bad enough to have to go to the hospital. So it's definitely out there. Again, going from our department perspective, we are starting to get a little bit nervous on staffing levels here. We actually just had our first staff member go out with it. And so we're kind of keeping a close eye on that to make sure that we keep our staffing levels up and ready to go. Bill, I think I'll turn it over to you for some of the more technical stuff as to how things are looking.
Well, the technical stuff is that basically the hospital, St. Mary's anyway, the standard rooms are full. They're using the accessory rooms. People that are negative pressure, they will run out of those too. I will tell you, I know everybody's tired of having to follow the rules, but I beg you to do it. I mean, I know Chris makes fun of my goggles, but they're very nice things, and use the face masks and literally staying away from, I hate the shutdown idea, but I'm worried that will happen as we get to the point where we're out of space. Because basically right now, a certain percent of the population who gets COVID, no matter what, will get the inflammatory problem, which is how you end up in the hospital. So, and I've had as young as 29, I've had pregnant ladies, I've had people that, the whole problem is that it just lingers on for some of the older people for months. So I beg people to just stay down as much as they can for right now. And I appreciate all the things Scott's doing. They basically have 100% risk with every person that they pick up, because most of them they're picking up now are probably COVID. So thanks.
I'd give a shout out to the groups that helped coordinate the flu vaccination clinic a week or so ago. Appreciate that. And here in our own house per se, in the village departments, we've had 2 employees who have tested positive now. I sent that information to village board members, and certainly we've taken appropriate precautions as a result and actions as a result. So we're definitely it's becoming impactful right here with us in our operations.
So
Is there any question?
board members, any questions for Bill, Scott, or Todd at this time? If you have a question, raise your hand. Seeing none, I actually do. Go ahead, Gary. I'll wait and go ahead.
I was just curious, the limited in-person schools, has that created part of the problem, or is it just a combination of bars, restaurants, schools, everything?
The acceleration was happening before the schools, probably. The schools, if there's a part of the school thing that, and this is, there's no direct evidence yet. The thing I think that happened with the schools to me is that once it was okay to go to school, then everybody kind of let go. Like people started having birthday parties and grandma started going to the birthday parties and things that are, things that just, everybody wants to do it, right? They want to do it. And so if you want to say it may be an indirect effect, but it was actually accelerating before the school process.
So I'll just make my comments quick. First off, I did not pick on Bill about his glasses. I actually thought they were stylish and I would wear them in public. Look at, does he not look stylish with those? I mean, come on. So I really was being serious about that. Second, we had our listening session and we did have some comments at our listening session in regards to COVID and Bill kind of said the same things there. And I look at it, this isn't a political issue. It's become such a massive political issue, but it really is not. It's a health issue that we have. And if the example I used for the meeting the other night was it's a tug of war and the pandemic and the virus is on one side and the people are on the other. And whoever stays together and fights it properly, we're going to win. If we don't, and we're all fighting about it and not doing what we should be doing, we're going to get pulled right into it and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. That's what I've seen and it continues to be that case. So if you're with your friends out in public, and they don't have a mask on, remind them they should have a mask on. If they're not 6 feet apart, you see people, a group of people, just go over and politely, hey, this is a serious thing right now in our community. And if you don't mind, please distance yourself. Make sure you're doing and following those rules. The question I have for Bill and Scott, so the public knows, what would constitute them coming into the doctor to get tested? If somebody sneezes, should they be going into the doctor? If somebody has a raspy throat, a sore throat, a cough, runny nose, what's the reason or what's the thing that should pull them in to get tested?
So there's two, I apologize, Scott, I'm going to jump. The two of them are, one is that sometimes people have developed the symptoms, fever, cough, actually lost a sense of smell or taste. Those things are important as far as maybe tracing and where they got it from and how if they could have possibly put anybody else at risk. The other is where people actually get, symptoms themselves. The amount of if they're short of breath and they have, symptoms where they aren't comfortable and they need oxygen and things like that, that's pretty direct and they should go, right? So we have the two groups, which is the people that are, have enough symptoms to go. And number two is the people who, where by knowing if you carry it, you can tell people, you can maybe shut down a chain of infection by identifying yourself. And then maybe the people who are contacted around you can isolate themselves to stop the chain. Otherwise, it's like it just travels one to the next if nobody steps up to get checked. So, and it can travel anyway. It's tough.
So Bill, thanks for sharing that. I mean, I know this is a heavily watched in the community event at all of our village board meetings. That part of it is probably more important than anything else we discussed tonight, was knowing this is dangerous, this is how it's spread, this is the symptoms you could have, this is what you need to go in and how you need to take care of it. So thank you guys for both sharing anything. Scott, I don't want to cut you off, but I'm assuming Dr. Random covered it.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is some people have been having problems getting into their primary for testing if they don't have symptoms. So just be cognizant that the Alliant Energy Center is open almost daily to go in for testing. So if for some reason your primary care physician won't let you in because of the symptom issue, you can still go there for the testing and peace of mind if you'd like.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, everybody, and sharing with that. Okay, let's move on if that's okay with all the board members. Everybody good? Yep, perfect. All right, discuss and take action on racism, tolerance, and equality in the Waunakee community. Todd?
Two quick updates today. The university year partnership that we have with UW is in the process where they're setting kind of their plan with some leads. So what I've done is I've been submitting to UW the name of co-leads. Bill's going to be a co-lead, for example, on the project related to mental health. So I'm sending 2 to 3 co-leads per project, and they are initiating those scoping meetings with the co-leads in order to lay out the plan for action for those 7 different projects that we identified. So that's progressing. And then the other thing I'll mention is that there's a peace walk planned in the community that's being coordinated by Cass Punzel and the folks who have engaged with the Waunakee Diversity Facebook group. I'll just quickly read their promo that they have on Facebook. Waunakee Peace Walk 2020, Sunday, November 22nd from 4 to 5:30. Join friends and family and members of the community of all ages to peacefully remember what unites us. As the Waunakee Rotary lights the holiday lights in Village Park, we will release lanterns to kick off a new season of coming together. There's a special meal order that you can do through Taher, and there's going to be a few speakers. So that's the 22nd of November. I think leaving from the Village Center and then a small route into Village Park.
Great. Any questions for Todd? I'll also just comment that I did speak with Cass and Joel Lewis in the last week here, and I wanted to get some perspective from them as far as what we've all been doing with the board and things that they're observing in our community. And we're going to have regular meetings going on between myself and them. And I invite any of you, if you want to reach out to them, to have meetings as well. Good thing, or something that really struck Joel heavily, and I hope he's okay with me saying this, I'm sure he is the fact that we acknowledged Martin Luther King Jr. Day. That was a very big deal for him, that we recognize that, and just another step that he views is that we're taking forward in our community. So just point that out since that's something that I've been doing as well. Okay, that said, our final item tonight before Bill's recommendation to do something is to discuss and take action on process for considering alternatives for EMS organizational structure. So Bill had approached me some time ago, we'll just say, and just was kicking around the idea of some different changes that we might want to consider with EMS. And in having those discussions, I felt it was important that we have a discussion as a board sooner than later. Bill is our representative with the EMS and has been for some time now. And with his background, I think it's important to listen to what a doctor's perspective is. And also, he's a board member that is very concerned and wanting to make sure that we have the highest levels of EMS, as well as making sure that whatever the system is, works with not only Waunakee, but all of our partnering communities at this point, and what might be best for all involved. So, Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you and go ahead.
Well, I've been on the commission, I think 5 years now, and it's obviously, and Nyla's obviously been involved with her family forever, basically, since it's been around. But my the change that I wanted to bring up through the board was that, and more or less informational to start with, is that over the organization started as basically a volunteer organization, and the commission. So there was a board of EMTs or care people that took care of themselves, and the commission basically provided the resources that they could take care of themselves and provide excellent service forever. I mean, for a long period of time. There are still volunteers on the service, but the service has become there's also a fair amount of paid staff, which and Scott runs that paid staff and the volunteers. So my thoughts as it goes, as we have HR and we have building services and we have other resources that might allow some efficiency along with continuing to provide excellent care for our community, is it might be worth it to at least look at what the options are as far as whether the village should assume a different role in the care of the EMTs, and so that's I'm bringing it up because I think we're sort of at a crossroads now because we're changing, and it certainly has changed a bunch in the last 5 years, and I give Scott credit for all of it, but it's a lot. I mean, he and this group is taking care of the building, the training, the equipment, and it is to me an HR, I apologize. And so that involves insurance and all the other things that are involved in that. So I'm just wondering if there's if we could at least explore whether there's a more efficient way using some of the resources we have instead of duplicating them in the same system. So open to questions and not trying to distress anybody.
Okay, questions. I know, I mean, Nyla and Phil, you probably have the most with this, Phil being on volunteering for many, many years. So questions are a good thing to ask right now as again, we're just, exploring this and what our options could be.
That's right. It's just a startup, and I'm actually it feels like we may be a little bit out of step because I've got to talk to the commission again at our next meeting, in the November meeting. But part of my frustration is I don't get to get the information out to you guys necessarily now because we're all here, right, on a video chat. So this is a way to get it out, I guess, and not surprise anybody.
So go ahead, Phil.
Well, I guess it's time to think about how the service is funded. I know Waunakee takes a big bite of it, and the surrounding municipalities take a little bit of it. I'm wondering if we could add a second leg to the contribution from the other communities, because a couple of them take an abnormal amount of calls versus their population, and whether that should be weighed into their charges.
Well, I think we're basically at the beginning just trying to get to how the structure would be. And I'm not saying that's off the table. I'm just trying to figure out I'm looking for efficiencies, Phil, and what the cost efficiencies are. And if we can create some, I think we should. I mean, and that I think the situation would probably be that if we did acquire there would be some sort of leasing back, and probably the communities would be bidding on where they want to be, right? So it sort of would open up a free market situation more than anything else, I believe, over time.
Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Scott and his staff, they're professionals at taking care of people. We have people in the village staff that understand HR, they understand buildings, they understand how to take care of things like that. And we should be sharing those resources so Scott can focus on his main purpose in life. And maybe there's a way that, the hours that our staff put toward this goes to, our community portion of the, payment for the services or whatever. But I think it's probably past due that we, should have been doing this long before.
Yeah. Well, I think Scott will tell you stories about garage doors, but that's up to him later.
Okay. I don't have a question. I have more of a comment. I would like to say that anything that would be done, we have to show consideration and concern for 5 different groups. And one of those groups is all of those currently served by the EMS service, the municipalities in the service area, volunteers serving on the EMS, paid employees, in the interest of the village of Waunakee and taxpayers in the village. And I think it's very important that all of those considerations and be made when going through any process that we may go through.
Right, and I think that's 100% where we're looking at. We have a lot of shareholders in this process, and to me, the safety of everybody is probably number one. I mean, having an efficient service, and then we work our way through the rest.
Kristen, any comments?
No, this seems sensible to me.
Aaron?
I agree, and I'm glad we're looking at it proactively. Have any discussion started with any other the municipalities that are served?
Just, I think it'll start mostly at the commission. It's more or less, I really don't have a great idea of what their whole interest is right next, but I do have an idea that I think we can get along. These communities have been getting along since 1978, in the current structure. So hopefully that can be prolonged. I mean, that's an amazing length of time, so.
Perfect. So thank you all for your comments. Bill, I think you've got some there. My thing with this right from the start was I want to make sure that we all have a great service to our community, the best quality service we can have with appropriate funding for it to make sure it's running efficiently for the dollars that we're spending out there. And then for all of our partner communities that they continue, regardless of what we do, to have that same great service that's out there. And then obviously to keep it at an affordability level for all of them. But as Bill said, they could have opportunities that might be a better fit for them as well at this point. That's what we're doing, is we're just looking out to see what's going to be most effective for all of us, and including Waunakee. And as I think it was Phil or Nyla mentioned, I mean, we do put a significant dollar into this. And the things that go on within, our volunteers have been amazing over the years. We couldn't even touch it. And right now, the job that they're doing is a great job. Could it be better? Yep. I think it could be better. And we could do more services to our community. So when Bill approached me, I'm always going to be open to anything you guys approach me with. And, he's going to be taking this back to the commission now and having a discussion with them. And then we'll move it forward from there and see what comes out of the commission. So Bill will be reporting back to us. Is that fair to everybody? Yes? Okay, and Bill might have some, if you need my assistance or anything, with the other municipal leaders and representatives for those communities, obviously reach out to us if there's questions. Again, this is just the start for us to figure out a system. And it may be that we figure out that we stay with the system.
It could very well be that we stay. Who knows? And since Caitlin's not doing anything, we'll just borrow her, to help. So
yes. By the way, I didn't make it during public comment, but I'm just going to say kudos right now to our staff with the election and all the hours and work that they've been putting in. And tomorrow, if you want to talk about a hard day, it is a very hard day for our poll workers and our staff. They're up at crack of dawn and they're there until, well, let's just say well into the night. So it's without a break really for the most part. So stay safe. Also, I'll just point out to those staff members and volunteers with that tomorrow. And let's have a safe election for everybody. So Todd, I don't think we need to do anything additional with EMS portion, do we?
As long as Bill's confident in the feedback he heard from the board.
Bill, are you good?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Any other comments? Bill, any other comments?
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Bill Random to adjourn. And we have a second from Kristen Runge. She put her hand up first, so I'm going to give her the second on that one. Thanks, everybody. Let's have a good, safe election tomorrow, and look forward to our next meetings. Thanks. So, Caitlin, roll call, please, or Todd, roll call. I guess Caitlin's off.
Caitlin's gone. Caitlin has gone to bed some time ago, getting ready for tomorrow. Kristen Runge.
Yes.
Aaron Moran.
Yes.
Chris Zellner.
Yes.
Phil Willems.
Good night, Gracie.
Nyla Fry.
Yes.
Bill Random.
Yes.
And Gary Ersberg.
Yes.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.